That when the family and friends got together, inevitably it would be, what camp were you at? What block did you live in? And that was the connection, and that was the commonality they shared. So I grew up with this history.
A date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry were transported to an assembly center where they lived for months, eventually being transferred to one of 10 relocation centers.
My name's Carole Hayashino. I am the daughter of Henry Okimoto Hayashino and Barbara Yamamoto. Both were residents of Stockton in 1941-42, and they were sent from Stockton to Rohwer, Arkansas during World War II. I really believe my father wanted us to understand what he went through, what my grandparents went through for us, in order to make things better for us. And that's why it was so important for us, not that we had to be successful, but he wanted us to be good people, good, compassionate people. In 1941-42, they weren't certain what was going to happen to them. They knew that there were a lot of rumors about being rounded up or sent away. So my grandfather one day dressed them up in their Sunday best and took this family photo. And he gave each child this photo in the event that the family was separated and sent to Japan or various parts of the United States. He wanted them to know, to be able to find each other after the war. My grandfather and my father talked about the day the FBI came to search the house and to pick up my grandfather. My grandfather was prepared. He knew he was going to be picked up. So he was ready. He was dressed in a suit and he had a bag packed. And so it was no surprise to him when the sheriff and I think it was police and sheriff came by to pick him up. And they searched the house and they happened to find a toy, a soldier's hat. And it was like a Japanese kid's hat, and it was a Japanese soldier's hat, and they took that as evidence, and he was carted away, and that was the last that they saw of him for 2 years. So my grandfather was sent off to the Department of Justice camp, and eventually my father and my grandmother and my aunts and uncles were taken from Stockton to Rohwer, Arkansas. My father felt responsible, being the oldest. He felt responsible for his mother and for his siblings. When the loyalty oath came around, he chose to answer no, that he would not serve in the military simply because he did not want to leave the family. He could not leave the family without his father. This was a sign that my father took from Rohwer, Arkansas. This sign, there were two of these signs that just hung in our laundry room, in the back room, all my life. I mean, they just hung on the wall, and I never paid that much attention to it until really the 1970s, 1980s, and I realized what it was. And then on the back, he had people sign the back of the sign, and some of these people were people who lived on the block with him. This sign is interesting because it looks like he had some of the guards sign it as well. A few of them I recognize the names because they're Stockton people that, post-war, my father, we were family friends. So, there are some names I recognize. I remember, because I grew up in a country town outside of Stockton, very few Japanese classmates. And I remember my teacher asking, did this happen to anyone else's parents? And nobody raised their hand. And I thought, wow, I wonder, it just happened in my family? Like, how could that be? So I couldn't understand why there wasn't any information on it. And it just seemed odd to me that why did it happen to my parents and my grandparents, but my classmates were just silent on it. Then it wasn't until much later, until I was in college, that I understood that my family was different and that they talked about their experience. My father talked about it, my grandfathers. After I finished college, I wanted to go into law school. My friends were all going into law school. It was 1970s, everyone was going to law school. I was going to go to law school. And I was telling my father and my grandfather that I was going to be an attorney. And my grandfather said, no, you're not going to be an attorney. Lawyers, FBI, police, they're all crooked. And that stemmed back from his own experience during World War II. I ended up working for the National JACL during the Redress campaign. I worked on the National Committee for Redress. And it's hard to believe that Redress is now 30 years. It's going to be the 30th year. And I was just really, when I think about it, I was just a kid. I was maybe not a kid, but older than you. But, 30 years ago, I was at the JACL convention in Seattle, and I was very lucky, very, very fortunate to be one of the JACL people to be invited to the White House to witness President Reagan sign the Redress bill. My grandfather would probably feel like, government will never apologize, it'll never happen, they're too proud, they'll never admit they made a mistake. I think that would have been his position. And he would probably say, I would never take the apology, I would never accept it. But I think once Redress passed, and if my grandfather was around, I believe he would have accepted it. I think it would have helped reconcile and heal any of his own animosity or pain he felt towards the government.